Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, we're going to pick back up with some good old Cable. Now, technically, with this storyline, we're kind of getting into the idea of the possibility of Cable meeting up with some other characters from the Age of Apocalypse storyline. Now, technically, in this storyline, he'll meet one of those characters, but it's also kind of building up to the idea of Cable meeting his counterpart from the Age of Apocalypse timeline, better known as Nate Gray. And matter of fact, when it comes to our coverage of the X-Men, we have to now start covering the X-Men series that follows Nate Gray as he arrived in this reality after the end of Age of Apocalypse. Now, when it comes to this three-part story arc, it does pick up where our last Cable video had left off at. You see, in our last video for Cable, him and Domino had traveled into the far future to allow themselves to save a younger version of Cable. Now, here comes the big problem, because when they had arrived in that point in time, they also ran into a younger version of his wife. Now, for Cable, the question was then, would he try to save her life to allow the chance for him and her to be together in his present day point in time? And the thing is, for Cable, he knows you can't change the past, because if you do, you're going to change the future. And you have no idea what the outcome could possibly be if you do try to change the future. And so for Cable, he had no choice but to go ahead and save a younger version of himself, but still knowing that his wife is going to die again. Now, after all of that, you then had Cable and Domino be teleported back to the present day of the Marvel comic timeline. And the question is now, where are they going to end up at? Well, in this three-part story arc, they're going to end up in Genosha. And we have talked a lot about Genosha. When it comes to Genosha, it is a country in Africa on a small island near South Africa, where originally it was left to believe that it was a perfect country. If you go there, everything is going to be okay for you. But then later on, we discovered that if you were a mutant, technically you were a slave, because they used the mutants as a way to help build up their nation. And so again, to the rest of the world, they believed everything was perfect. But in reality, it wasn't. Now, over the years in Marvel Comics, things had only gotten worse in Genosha, where we're now at a point where we have a civil war happening in Genosha, where you have the mutants there wanting to be free, but you have the humans there wanting to reclaim their mutants as slaves and bring back the old ways of their country. But you also have a third group, a group right now trying to end both sides to allow both mutants and humans to live together in harmony. Now, this third party is technically being led by a character known as Philip Moreau. Really two characters, Philip and his girlfriend, Jenny Ransom. Now, really Philip's more important here than Jenny. And the reason why, because we were left to believe in the early days of Genosha that it was Philip's father, David, who had created the entire process of mutants being turned into slaves for this country. But in reality, it wasn't David. It was another character known as the Sugar Man. Now, the Sugar Man comes from the Age of Apocalypse timeline. Him and a few other characters were able to escape that timeline and come over to this one. Except for Sugar Man and also Dark Beast, they had arrived 20 years in the past. And so for the entire time for Sugar Man, he has been working behind the scenes when it comes to Genosha. So at first, we did believe it was David Moreau, but in reality, it was the Sugar Man who had created the process of turning mutants into slaves. Now, for Philip and also for Jenny, their main goal right now is to just end the war, but they have been given intel by one particular character, and that would be Mr. Sinister. Now, for him, he also wants to know what in the world is going on here in Genosha. But he does tell Philip and Jenny, like, hey, listen, very soon help will arrive to make things better for you and also this country. Because Sinister, he knew that Cable and Domino would arrive back here at this point in time to kind of help out with Genosha. And so that kind of leads into Cable and Domino arriving into Genosha. Now, when they do arrive, they have no idea where they're at because technically they had just time traveled back in time and they ended up here in the middle of Genosha. And so for Cable and Domino, they're wondering, like, hey, where are we? But also for Cable, he's not really able to call out to help to the X-Men, X-Force, even X-Factor. So they're kind of stuck and they begin to walk around. Now, when they do, you then have Cable and Domino get attacked by different drones that were created by the Magistrate. Now, the Magistrate was really more of a police force that was being used in the early days of Genosha. If you had mutants that tried to escape into other countries, or possibly mutants who would fight back for their freedom, the Magistrate, they were there to shut everything down just like that. And so right now, the Magistrate and their drones are trying to bring supposed order back into the country where humans are in charge, but mutants are slaves once again. And so you have these drones begin to attack Cable and Domino. Now, luckily for our heroes, you had Philip and also Jenny arrive to help protect them. Now, for Sugar Man, he just saw Cable and Domino arrive. But for Sugar Man, when he looks at Cable, he believes it's Nate Gray, but not realizing at first that this is not Nate Gray at all. That in reality, this is Cable, somebody completely different. But for right now, he's kind of wondering, why does Nate Gray look older? Now, for the Magistrate, they're still there in Genosha. Their main goal, like I said earlier, is to bring back order to Genosha, where humans are in charge, where mutants are now second-class slaves once again. So you do have a few characters we've seen before in the early days of Genosha, still there trying to work together to hopefully bring back that order they believe the country actually needs. But this kind of leads us over to Cable, Domino, Jenny, and Philip being able to regroup at Philip and Jenny's base to kind of talk about what's happening in this country. Now, really more for Cable, he wants to make sure that before he helps out Philip with the whole idea of the Civil War, that Philip understands what's going to happen in this Civil War. You are talking of the possibility of bodies just piling up to achieve some kind of goal. But for Philip, he knows that. But at the same time, he wants to reach that goal where mutants and humans are able to live together in harmony. He knows it's something that can be done. Now, with all that being said, Domino understands what's going on with Cable. She knows that for Cable, he's trying to distract himself. They had just left one battlefield and got into another battlefield. But on top of that, for Cable, he went into the far future, saw a younger version of his dead wife, and he knew he couldn't do anything at all to save her. And so unfortunately, technically, he lost his wife all over again. And so for Domino, she knows that it's Cable not wanting to talk about it. Now, we also see this very loving moment between Jenny and also Philip, which kind of reminds Cable of him and his wife, but also kind of like him and Domino, who are kind of in this awkward, weird phase right now where it's like, could they be a couple or not? But while they were talking to one another, you didn't have Cable kind of push Domino out of the way. And the reason why, because Philip and Jenny's base is currently being attacked right now by the Magistrate. They found the base and now their main goal is to kill out the entire group to allow them the chance to finally take over this country once again. And so as we dive into the second chapter, you're now kind of seeing Cable and his side he's working with fight against the Magistrate. Now for Cable, he recognized two members of this group because in our last video, he fought against them at the airport when it came to him trying to help out a woman who was trying to escape from Genosha. Now that right there is technically minor, but you do have Cable and his forces kind of being able to take over the battle very easily because he's there. He knows how to handle this kind of situation. Now, Pipeline, who is the leader of the group, he has the ability to teleport people away. And so his goal right now is to do a full-on retreat. Except you have Cable use his powers on the minor Pipeline to stop him. Now, the rest of the group, they got away. But Pipeline got stuck behind. And so now, for our heroes, they now have a hostage they could use to hopefully help them win the war by finding the base of the Magistrate. But after the battle, you do have Cable kind of ask a few questions like, hey, you know what? Are you truly ready to take on the next part of this war? And you have Philip say yes. Now, for Cable, he also wants to know, like, who told you that I was going to be here? Because remember, Sinister did tell Philip and also Jenny help was going to arrive very soon. And that was Cable and Domino. And so you have Philip tell Cable, like, yeah, it was a guy known as Essex. Now, for Cable, he does remember the name, but the name does not match a face in his mind. He does not remember that Sinister is, well, of course, Essex. So he's kind of like, that name sounds so familiar, but why? Now, for Sugar Man, he now knows where this is going to go. The possibility of our heroes finding his base. And for Sugar Man, he's like, hey, bring it on. Bring it on because I'm going to kill them all as soon as they arrive. Now, this kind of leads into a dialogue where I kind of feel like could have been a tad bit better because you do have Cable get very upset with Pipeline because the Pipeline, again, he wants to bring back the old ways. And really, it's more a Pipeline saying, hey, I lost my family. I lost my friends. Thanks to these people who wanted to be free. No, they're Gene jokes. They should be slaves. But you have Cable get ticked off like, no, look at these rebels as you call them. They're humans and mutants working together in harmony because they realize that y'all's ideas, y'all wishes were completely wrong. Either way, it's Cable saying, I can use my powers to control your mind, to make you do what I want you to do. Now, I feel like some more words could have been said there when it came to Cable to kind of express how angry he is. But hey, either way, we do move on. So after all of that, you have to remember that Sinister did give some info over to Philip. And so Philip says, hey, listen, I got this location that we should check out. And so for Cable, he tells Pipeline with his powers, take us to this location right now. And once they do arrive at this location, for Philip, he does remember this location because he used to camp out there with his father when he was a young boy. But they do find this secret base. Now for Essex, this is perfect. He's watching them as they go inside. They don't realize they're being watched, but for him, it's like, okay, cool. I'm about to get my answers that I have been looking for. Now, they do find this laboratory that is completely operational at the moment. But the problem is, with this kind of equipment, somebody has to be here to operate this entire place. And the question is right now, who? But it's also Philip realizing that what he had heard is technically true, that his father was not the one who had created the whole process of turning mutants into slaves, that in reality, it was somebody else. Now, for Pipeline, he also realized that the magistrate has been played by somebody else. It's not David who had created the process. It is, again, somebody else. We know who it is. It's the Sugar Man. And for Sugar Man, he's very upset because now it's like, okay, cool. They found my base. You know what? That means it's time to go. But I got to make sure that everyone dies in Genosha. And so the last page is him saying, like, I'm going to kill everybody. And matter of fact, I'm going with the Cable guy because I have no idea who he is. Like, he looks like Nate Gray, but it really seems like he's not Nate Gray. He's some older version of Nate. Now, the final chapter for me is a small problem. And here's the reason why. Because I really do hate this type of trope where in movies, TV shows, and comics where basically you have some kind of countdown, right? And our hero had to go do some kind of obstacles to achieve some kind of goal before the time expires. Now, in reality, we already know if they have to go through some kind of obstacles to reach some kind of goal, then most likely they're not going to reach that goal before time expires. But in comics, in movies, in TV shows, in some crazy type of way, they're really able to achieve that goal in that time limit. And so in this book, it's kind of like that where our heroes hear a countdown like, hey, y'all got 60 seconds. And the reason why, because we got a core meltdown because there is a nuclear reactor in this base right now that's about to go off here in a few moments. And so for our heroes, they realize they got to find a way to shut down this core meltdown situation. The problem is that they only have 60 seconds. But for our heroes, they see a bunch of mutates just running away, like freaking out. And so for our heroes, let's go investigate to see where in the world they're coming from and why they're so scared. Like, who are they running away from? and that would be the Sugar Man. Now, here's the thing, because for our heroes, the countdown's still going down. And so for our heroes, they're fighting against the Sugar Man as the countdown continues. Now, Sinister, he's also there. He's watching the battle, but now he knows who was behind Genosha the entire time. It was the Sugar Man. Now, he does not know everything about the Sugar Man, but he now knows this right here. The Sugar Man took his work and kind of just changed it a tad bit to allow him the ability to turn mutants into slaves for Genosha. But either way, for Sinister, at least now he knows who's behind the entire operation when it comes to Genosha. Now, with all that being said, for our heroes, they continue to battle against Sugar Man, really more Cable fighting against him, because for Sugar Man, he looks at Cable and say, dude, you look just like Nate Gray, but a tad bit older. Now, for Cable, he's wondering, who in the world is Nate Gray? Again, building up to the idea of Cable meeting X-Men very soon in our coverage. Now, while all that is happening, on the other side of the world, we got Dark Beast. Now, for Dark Beast, he's watching all of this. And for Dark Beast, just like Sugar Man, they both arrived to this timeline after leaving the Age of Apocalypse timeline. But just like Sugar Man, they both arrived 20 years in the past. Now, for Dark Beast, he's kind of been beefing with Sugar Man in those 20 years. And so for him, he's like, okay, this is the perfect time to just download all the files that Sugar Man has on his computer. Now, while trying to do that, there is one file that he's not really able to access. But for him, it's kind of like, you know what, fine. At least we now know there is another Nate Gray. And of course, he's talking about Cable. But getting back over to the battle, you do have Cable kind of lose that battle, and the reason why, because he was trying to access the mind of Sugar Man, having a hard time doing that, but it kind of allowed him to be easily defeated by Sugar Man. Now, for Sugar Man, he's kind of like, cool, you're done with. Oh, look who it is. It's Philip. And he knows Philip very well because, again, David, Philip's father, had worked with Sugar Man to kind of help get the idea of the process of turning mutants into slaves. And so the Sugar Man saying like, dude, I have all the answers, but the question is right now, are you ready to ask all those questions to get all the answers that you are looking for? Now, he also tells Philip like, dude, I am not from this world at all. And matter of fact, where I came from, I made sure to bring the work of Sinister. And so that right there explains how he was able to come over here in this reality and use the work of Sinister, but not the one we all know and love, the one from the Age of Apocalypse timeline. Now, with all that being said, you still have Sugar Man grab Philip and they leave. And so now he's technically a hostage. But now in the last 10 seconds of this countdown, right? And so you do have Cable tell Pipeline, like, hey, get Domino and Jenny out of here right now. I'm going to stay behind and try my best to stop this meltdown. Now, Domino says no. You have Pipeline grab Jenny, and they do leave. Now, for her and Pipeline, they do get teleported back over to the main base of the Magistrate, where you do have the rest of the organization hear from Pipeline that, well, they have been played, that they should no longer try to pursue a goal of taking over Genosha. So it does seem like finally they're going away. But for Cable and Domino, they're still trying to put in different codes to shut down the meltdown. And luckily for Cable, he found the right code. And that code would be sugar, which honestly makes a lot of sense because it's the Sugar Man, y'all. Come on now. But yes, you do have Cable stop the meltdown. But after all of that, you then have Sinister appear. Now, when he appears, it's really more of him saying like, hey, listen, thank you for helping me out. Like, first, let me go ahead and knock out Domino. So you and I can have a one-on-one conversation. Cool. On top of that, I want to say thank you for getting my work back to me. Now, we could say that this is really not his work because in reality, this work came from his counterpart over in the Age of Apocalypse timeline, but they're the same character. So like, yeah, it could be his work as well, but it's also him saying, hey, I want to tell you this, like Sugar Man was not expecting you, but he was expecting you. Really a different you, kind of hinting at the idea of X-Men. So it's him saying like, hey, listen, keep your eyes out for your counterpart because somebody out there is just like you, but a tad bit different. And we have no idea how you two are different just yet. So building up that process of Cable meeting X-Men for the first time.